Welcome. I'm Ralph Bivins from the Ralph Bivins Project, and we're going to find out today what is the number one selling master plan community in America. We're going to get to that in just a second. And we have a lot of other interesting stuff about the city that is number one in master plan community home sales. I'm sure a lot of people in Texas are really familiar with it. We're going to cover a lot of things like that and why is this happening, what's going on with home sales, home marketing, and we're great to have Greg Logan today from RCLCO, and he's a housing analyst and has gone over this produces a report about the top 50 master plan communities in the country. And it's a big thing that everybody looks forward to. It comes out twice a year from RCLCO. And this is the mid-year just came out, so we're getting a fresh look at fresh materials. So, Greg, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
I just, number one again in America, the number one master plan community in America, the Villages in Florida. The Villages is kind of near Orlando, I think. What happens there? Why are they doing so well?
Well, their overnight success, was not exactly overnight. So RCLCO, my firm, has been tracking the top master plan communities since the 1990s, and the Villages has held a high place in that ranking for the last 10 years or so. But it took them a long time to get there. They started back in the 90s, early 90s, and started off fairly modestly. And once they had kind of a critical mass in place, really a trigger for them was when they started looking at what Del Webb was doing in Arizona. And they saw how Del Webb really had created an entire world for retirees and had done a great job of answering the question, where do you want to be when you retire? And had done that with recreational amenities and shopping and services and so forth. So the Villages at that time, back in the early 90s, didn't have as much of that kind of thing. They didn't really have all the shopping and services, and they started creating these town centers. And one of the things that they did really well was all these retirement communities, the Del Webb communities and others, had a lot of clubs and social activities that you could join and get involved in. One of the things that they did really well at the Villages in creating these town centers was making sure they included some nightlife, some bars and restaurants and bowling. And it's almost like college for retirees. It's almost like going off to college and sort of, it's me time. We talk about the me generation being the millennials or the Xers or whoever is supposed to wear that hat. I think that really was the message of the Villages is come here and have a great life. And it's almost like you've lived in the world and you've done your work all these years. And now you're going to come to this place where you're going to live where you would want a vacation and then come here and have that kind of year-round vacation lifestyle, and importantly, you're going to meet other people, you're going to make new friends and have the best social life that you ever had. And so it's almost not about the houses per se. They do have a lot of golf, and so it's a great if you're a golfer, it's a golfer's paradise. They have a lot of free executive golf there, and then some very nice golf clubs you can join that cost you a little bit more, but they really offer a really terrific social life. And I think that's a big part of the attraction of, and the best analogy I can think of is like going off to college. And as my kids told me when they went to college, it's like, Dad, I'm not just going for the academics. I want the whole experience, the whole college experience. And I think, we know what they meant by that. And I think that's what these retirees are looking for too, is that whole social experience. I'm going to make new friends and I'm going to have fun.
That makes it's working. That they sold 1,500 new houses in the first half of the year. That's phenomenal. That's phenomenal.
They've done really well, and it's one of the other things they did that was really smart. Different points in time and their history was they really emphasized to their residents that, you know, if your friends from up in Columbus, Ohio were to move down here too, then you'd have, you know, even better social life because your friends from back home could come down here and, you know, escape the winter snow and the cold weather. And by the way, if you do that, we'll pay your homeowners association fees for the year. I don't know that they're still doing that, but at one point in time, they offered incentives for people to invite their friends down. So they did a great job. They literally have used their residents as marketing and salespeople. So I did a tour up there years ago. They have a little tram tour that takes you around, and the tram tour was all done with residents. So you didn't really even talk to a salesperson when you go up there to learn about the community. The first thing you do is you get in a tram and go on a tour, and there's residents on the tour bus with you, and they're telling you about how happy they are and how much fun they're having and how great life is at the villages. And by the time you finally actually talk to a salesperson, you've already been essentially sold.
And they're great marketing company. They've done well.
They've been really good marketers. They've also done they've had a stay and play program, which, you know, a lot of communities and other retirement communities in other places like Arizona have done, you know, similar kinds of things, where they'll, you know, give you, you know, fairly low cost. They have some hospitality units where you can come and stay there and experience the place firsthand. They'll give you a budget, give you some money to spend on enjoying the amenities and going and playing some golf or whatever your thing is, and so you can kind of experience it in advance.
Well, if you're in the market and you want to live, you know, about 50 miles from Orlando, you really put it on your list.
Orlando is a great thing too, because if you're an empty nester grandparent and you have your grandkids want to come visit you, being, you know, not that far away from all of the Disney theme parks is an attraction. So you know, the other nice thing is your grandkids want to come visit you because you can take them to Disney when you're down here, you know, just up the street from Orlando.
Let's go to Grandma and Grandpa's. You know, they love it. Okay, Houston. Houston came out great in your RCLCO RELCO top 50.
RCLCO. So our RCL stands for Robert Charles Lesser. Bob Lesser founded the company.
Robert Charles Lesser was the founder.
When Bob retired and others took over the leadership of the firm, we decided we'd just keep the initials, and, you know, RCLCO has been our name for some years now. But so a lot of people still remember Bob and remember that it's Robert Charles Lesser.
Of the 50 top selling master plan communities in the United States, Houston had 13 of them. No other city had that number. That's pretty awesome. You know, here in Texas, that's a pretty impressive number. And we go, wow, that's tell me what happened. Why did Houston do so good for a change? We're doing good. Yeah, I mean, Houston's done great in new home sales a lot, but other parts of our economy, you know, kind of have had some rough spots. But right with home sales, we're at the top.
Houston's been a great market. If you look at Houston, like back in the Great Recession, Houston was not as impacted as other areas around the country. You know, partly because of you know, as an energy, you know, capital, and, you know, has attracted a lot of employment, you know, around the energy sector. You know, has been a big driver of growth there and has somewhat insulated the economy. But of course, you have to have the master plan communities in there in order to have the most sales in the master plan communities. So as you said, 13 communities. So far, year to date, that's about, you know, close to 3,500 sales. And that's almost 20% of all the master plan community sales among the top 50 communities anyway in the country. So the other places where we see a lot of master plan communities, California, Arizona, Texas, Florida is a really big market. So the state of Florida had about 36% of all the sales among the top ranked communities. Texas had about 34%, but 20% of those were right in the Houston market. And Houston is one of those markets where it's been, maybe a little easier for people to assemble large tracts of land, and you have some really terrific development companies there. Johnson Development is one that is really specialized in doing master planned communities. Starwood Land has some very successful communities there, and the Sonterra, Sienna, some of the other top-ranked communities. Johnson, being very active in that market for many years, has recognized that there, a lot of people want to be in that lifestyle of a master plan community. They'll pay more to be in a place that has some open space and recreational amenities and maybe a commercial center, kind of an all-in-one community where all their needs are met. And we do consumer research. We did a poll. Every couple of years, we'll ask people about what kind of place you want to live. And without exception, over the last 10 years, every time we do the poll and we talk about master plan communities, we find more people want to live in that kind of environment than we're developing master plan communities. There are a lot of builder subdivisions out there that are very nice as well and provide nice housing. Master plan community is a little bit different in that it's developed off of a comprehensive vision, tends to have more in the way of parks and open space and recreational amenities, and sometimes mixes in some commercial developments. You might have shopping and restaurants in a village center within a master plan community that you don't find in a typical subdivision. And Houston is blessed by having more of those kinds of communities as a part of what the overall housing community offering is there relative to other places in the country. And there's more demand than supply for master plan communities. And so Houston has done very well and is blessed by having some of these large development entities that have their roots in Texas and pursue that kind of development because there's such a ready market for it.
We've got great home sales, a lot of available land, and there are places in the city of Houston itself. There's a lack of zoning. I think sometimes people are moving in from out of state. That scares them to a certain extent, but they can say, well, I'll go in a master plan community and know where things are going to be out, where the shopping center is, how all these things will be laid out, and it gives them some certainty there that they may not feel it's absolute.
So Howard Hughes Corporation, Johnson Development, Starwood Land, they've developed these communities that are based off of a vision. And one advantage when you go into that master plan community that the plans tend to be flexible, but there's a vision for what they're going to be, and you go in there as a consumer and you can see what's going to be near me in the future. And I think that vision is very compelling to consumers. And one of the things we've seen that's really interesting in more challenging economic times, when some economists are saying we may have a recession in our future, for example. Nobody can say that for sure, and the economy, based on the most recent jobs data, still looks like it's going very strong. But when we've seen more challenging times like we did, back in the early back in 08 and 09, what we saw with master plan communities is that their capture of total home sales in America went up, and so consumers seem to look at master plan communities as a safer bet, a place where you're going to maybe have a stronger likelihood of strong home appreciation, and a place where housing values are probably not going to go down if there's a recession or other sort of economic black swan kind of event. And so we always see the capture rates that go up.
We're worried. We feel like, hey, we got to move to Houston. Our jobs transferred us. Where do we go? And they can, even, you're right, even some some of the down cycles we've had. Master plan community. You look at the Houston sales, and I go, wow, the big master plans, the woodlands.
Yeah, the capture of the master plan communities in Texas, they captured a larger share of the market in challenging economic times because people saw that it was what we call a flight to quality or a flight to safety, and I think we've seen that over and over again historically.
That keeps.
And I think that reinforces how consumers view a master plan community as a place to be. Not only is it some place that supports the lifestyle that you want. Master plan communities are more about lifestyle. Certainly you're looking for a good quality house, but you can find probably a similar house in different kinds of neighborhoods. And so I think consumers look at master plan communities and say, where is a place that's going to support the kind of life that I want, or where there's walking trails I can go and jog and exercise, or maybe there's a village center where we can walk or take our golf cart to dinner in the evening and not have to get back in the car and drive somewhere outside of our neighborhood, and where there's nice recreational amenities. Good schools are always a factor.
Oh yeah, it's the good schools make a big difference here, and that's. But you're right. And I think you mentioned the Howard Hughes Corporation, HHC, was they did the woodlands, which set the tone. It was 28,000. It is 28,000 acres, and to build all that,
they have Bridgeland.
Decades, to get food, but it's about built out. But they set a big tone in this town. This is what.
Well, their newer community, Bridgeland, was number 19 out of the 50 communities, as another Texas community by Howard Hughes Corporation.
Yeah, Bridgeland, kind of on the northwest side. Yeah. It's really come on strong. I think they had 300 home sales and 321 home sales, if I'm reading right, in the first half of the year. That's pretty good. It's real good. It's real good. So that's.
And then Johnson Development has Cross Creek and Sienna. They're developing along with Toll Brothers and
Wood Forest. I think they have.
Wood Forest is another one, and so and Jordan Ranch is another one. So Houston area is blessed by these by some very well heeled development organizations that see the value, and builders are and consumers are willing to pay a premium to be in those kinds of communities because they see the payoff.
Along those lines, Greg, we've also seen a tremendous amount of subdivisions that aren't. There may be 200 acres to maybe 150 acres or something like that, smaller, but they don't have the full set of amenities, of course. But there's, I think I've ran two of them on my Realty News report this week. The smaller, they're going to build 500 homes here. They're going to build 300 homes here. Those smaller subdivisions, they really. There's been a land rush in suburban Houston. The land brokers say it's just incredible, and all this demand for land is coming from, people who want to do different kinds of residential communities. And I don't know, you described them pretty well earlier about all the things they have that make master plan communities so desirable. But speak to me for a second, if you would, about the people that we say, well, we're going to make this choice and we're going to go to, a smaller subdivision that may not have the amenities that the Bridgeland has, or something like that.
There's a lot of nice homes that you can find in a more typical subdivision. The difference, a true master plan community, incorporates a variety of different housing types. Has different types and sizes and prices. They have some shared common space amenities. They typically have a public realm to them, as in town centers, town greens, and things like that. if you buy in a subdivision, so you typically might not get those things, but perhaps you can buy in a subdivision that is close to where some of those things are in the town or county where you're purchasing. The disadvantage of some of the subdivisions may be that you're commuting, particularly if you're commuting, further out to the suburban edge, you may find that you're having to rely on your car a lot more to get to things, and you're a little bit more remote from shopping and services and commuting to your job, and so you may end up finding that you get the house that you want, and that may be if you're the consumer who's really looking for primarily the house, that may be satisfactory, but you may find that you're a little more isolated and a little bit further from amenities and services and shopping. I think one of the biggest amenities when you think about where you want to live is convenience, and I think that living in a master plan community can be more convenient. When you go to work out, the jogging trail is right there. That you might not have a jogging trail in a subdivision. You may be running on the street or sidewalks if they're there. A lot of times you don't even have the sidewalks. There's probably a fitness center. So instead of having to get in your car and go drive to the gym, instead of having to hop in your car and go drive in town, or go drive to the mall, or head out to Main Street to find a place to go to dinner, there may be restaurants and shopping right in the community. So convenience is a factor, and people have shown that they're willing to pay a little bit of a premium to live in a master plan community in order to have those conveniences and get a little time back in your day and spend a little less time commuting, and being a little less dependent on your car. Even if you're dependent on your car within your master plan community, because of where you live in the community, you're still getting in your car and driving somewhere, but you're probably not having to get out and drive on the highway or drive as far to get to some of the things that you like to do. So in general, the master plan community is more supportive of a daily life.
So like we were talking earlier, a lot of this developed, and a lot of this big surge with all these land sales and new subdivisions, new master plans, a lot of that during the COVID era, and when people said, we need 2 home offices, we need more space. We're going to be spending a lot more time in. For a couple of years, that was true. But now, companies are saying, well, come on back to work. And well, what about 3 days a week? And some of them will do that. And some of them say, no, we need you to come downtown 5 days a week. And then you got that. So now they've got to drive a lot farther to work. And now gas is $5 a gallon. And so you're going, oops, man, maybe that wasn't such a great thing after all.
Well, places like we mentioned the Woodlands earlier. So the Woodlands has a significant town center there. And so if you live in the Woodlands, for example, you can live and work in the Woodlands. The number 2 selling master plan community in the country, Lakewood Ranch in Sarasota, Florida, has a significant employment center. And so they're a place you can live, work, and play. And I think that's a difference. So one of the ways that they differentiate themselves from the typical subdivision also is they provide more of a means of interaction between residents. So there's more of a sense of community there. They're because they have more of a variety of housing. Mom and dad can live there, and grandma and grandpa can move in too. And when your kids get ready to move, leave the nest, maybe there's some rental apartments there that your kids can go, or they can buy one of the starter houses. And so you often see multiple generations in these master plan communities as well. But it has been interesting, looking at the whole, boom that we saw, with the pandemic, and all of us in the real estate industry were kind of looking at each other and saying, this is not looking good. And March 2020, everything kind of came to a halt, and we all kind of had that deer in the headlights moment. But then it dawned on people, that okay, I'm going to be, working from home when there were some of the shutdowns and so forth, and my kids are going to be homeschooling. And now instead of having we have one home office, but my wife and I are both working at home. All of a sudden, people started looking at the house different. And I don't think we're putting that genie back in the bottle. So yes, some companies are saying we want you back in the office, or we want you back, 3 days a week. But I think we're in an era where people are going to be working remotely at least part of the time. And I don't think we're putting that genie back in the bottle. And so anyway, people are looking at the house differently now, and that's a long-term change. And so all of a sudden, people looked at their own house and said, when this kind of stuff happens, and all of a sudden we got to be homeschooling and all of us working from home, and I got to turn my garage into a home gym or whatever. We need more space, man. And so that created a real boom. That boom has slowed down. One of the negatives of the pandemic and impact on shipping containers from China and all that is we've seen a lot of and manufacturing. We've seen some supply chain challenges, and that's impacted home builders, and so it's been tough. Starting I'd say in mid 2021, back in June 2021, it was just tough to meet demand, and so in the second half of 2021 we saw the sales volume starting to slow down somewhat. I think interest rates almost doubling from 3% to 6%, which, as somebody who lived through the 1980s housing market where we had interest rates in the teens, I think the market will come to get used to a little bit higher rates, but I think that that and all the supply chain issues have caused sales to slow down a little bit. But there's still a lot of pent up demand out there, and I think these are all sort of short term issues that we're dealing with. Our long term read of the market is, we have we undersupplied the housing market from the end of the last recession into about 2017. And we have this generational wave of millennials coming into the market, and that wave is with us through 2030. And so, the housing demand is there, and I think we're going to continue to see very strong sales. Maybe if things are slowing down a little bit, maybe that's the silver lining, is that's an opportunity for everybody to catch their breath a little bit, because I think we're going to continue to see a strong housing market and see things pick up again.
Some of those builders had the logs were so long that they just quit selling homes. They said, well, we don't want to make people wait for more than 6 months or 9 months, and they don't know what the prices they'll be paying. It's 6 months, 9 months down the road with their material costs could be a lot more than when they gave the quote.
Well, supply and demand. So I mean, demand, inventory has been in shorter supply, and demand has been very strong. And so, I think we'll see that change a little bit as people get a chance to, as I said, catch their breath a little bit. And the pause will, probably be a good thing in the long run.
And these prices, home prices have gone up a lot. What is that going to stop? Or are we going to plateau out? Or is as you said, there's still this big shortage of inventory of homes is still not.
So home prices moderated a little bit. Does this represent a new trend of home prices moderating? So home price growth has been, pretty phenomenal. I mentioned Lakewood Ranch. Their prices, were up maybe 40%, and in fact, prices among master plan communities since the beginning of the pandemic back in 2020 are up, about 40%, and prices just this last year up about 15%. Our read of the tea leaves is that, well, if you look at what happened in May, sales, median home prices were up in May, but we're not growing as fast as they had been for the last couple of years. So the May data and the June data comes out next week, so we don't quite have that yet. But our sense is that it's going to show a continuing trend of the sales price, the growth in home prices has slowed again in June, as it already showed in May. And I think we'll see that through the summer, that price growth is moderating, and that so the prices are going to flatten a little bit. In terms of prices, coming down like they did in the Great Recession and in the 2008. If you look at most recessions, the 7 major recessions of the last several decades, the modern era, prices typically were flat or kept going up. Even and home sales volume themselves, on average, declined about 10%. So our expectation for if there is a recession is that it may not have a lot of impact on prices. We think prices the rate of price increases will slow, and we think the data, although there's not a lot of data on that yet, May, basically 1 month, does show that the rate of price increases is slowing, and we'll see what the June data shows. Sales pace, will fall off a little bit. We're not anticipating declines in prices.
So the increases are going to tame down a bit, but they're not unless the price is more.
Yeah, so we went from historically 4 or 5% annual price increases, then that jumped to 10%, then grew to 20% over the last few years or more, and now we think we're kind of going to be reverting back, say by 2023. Maybe we'll still be in like the 5 to 10% range, and probably over time reverting back, closer to that historical 5% range. That's a far cry from the 20% or more that we've seen in the last few years.
Yeah, 40%.
Unfortunately, incomes are not growing at that same pace, and so I think ultimately, real people at the end of the day, have to go and buy the homes that we're offering and the new homes, and so to the degree that price increases keep outstripping income growth, at some point it becomes unsustainable.
Well, we hope it remains sustainable. We hope we doesn't have another big crash like we've seen when everything goes wrong and prices go south and sales go south. But it doesn't seem like that.
That's in the cards this time around. So the last recession we had was a doozy, and we saw the volume of new home production decline by more than 60%. That really was an anomaly, and we just don't have the same circumstances. Back then we were oversupplying the market. Now we've had years of undersupplying the market and inability to provide enough inventory. Inventories are still very tight historically, and so a radical housing market adjustment like we had in the 08-09 period is just not in the cards this time around.
Right. Well, the top 50 is always interesting. The top 50 master plan communities in the nation, and we'll be carrying something on this at realtynewsreport.com and have more of the list there. And but it's always interesting, and it impacts so many people, and you wonder, how's my neighborhood doing? Mm-hmm. Where should my kid buy their first house? Things like that. It's impacts everybody's lives, and it's a great thing. And I really appreciate you taking time to share your expertise with us, and we look forward to the end of the year results. It's hopefully it won't be
back with us in January, and we'll see who won the race.
We'll celebrate 2023 with some interesting numbers. Thank you, Greg.
Thank you, Ralph.